Today, you're going to find out why you probably wouldn't survive even a single day as a squire in the Middle Ages. Forget everything you've seen in movies. There was no shining armor waiting for you, only rust, sour sweat, and the unbearable stench of unwashed horses. You'd wake up in a pile of straw crawling with fleas, dragged from sleep by shouting at 4 in the morning, and spend the rest of the day hauling gear that weighs more than a modern refrigerator. And that's just the beginning. So, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and get ready for one of the most exhausting days you could ever imagine. A bedtime story that will make you truly grateful to have been born in the 21st century. Close your eyes if you want. Picture yourself stepping into a time machine. You're about to feel every rough texture, every nauseating smell, every stabbing pain in your back that a young squire endured 800 years ago. If you're enjoying this kind of immersive storytelling, subscribe to the channel, but only if you really vibe with this style. And if you can, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Building this community of late-night explorers is always something special. Now, let's begin your first, and most likely last, adventure as a medieval squire. It's 4 in the morning. There's no alarm clock, only a knight bellowing your name as if his life depended on it. And, in a way, it might. You jolt awake on a bed that would make a cheap dorm mattress look like luxury at a 5-star spa. It's literally straw covered with rough fabric that scratches worse than a military uniform. The fleas are already having breakfast, and you're on the menu. The air is freezing. There's no heating system. Just you, a blanket that feels more like a ripped potato sack, and the harsh reality that you need to crawl out of this so-called bed now. Your feet hit packed earth. Not wood flooring, not tile. Actual cold, damp dirt, with little stones perfectly placed to stab the soles of your feet. You fumble in the dark for your clothes. The exact same ones you wore yesterday, and the day before, and the ones you'll keep wearing for the next 6 months. There's no closet. Just a plank with nails where your 2 tunics hang, swaying like pale ghosts in the icy draft. And the smell, oh, the smell. Imagine a cocktail of stable filth, fermented sweat, and something unidentifiable that definitely shouldn't be anywhere near where people sleep. That's your new morning fragrance, and you haven't even stepped out of your room yet. Time for your morning hygiene. Forget your 7-step skincare routine. First, the toilet. There is no bathroom. There's a hole in the ground out in the courtyard, shared with about 20 other people. If you're lucky, there's a wooden plank with a smaller hole on top. If not, well, let's just say you'll discover what unwanted tickling really means. Toilet paper? Whatever leaf you can find that doesn't rip your skin to shreds. If you're smart, you'll choose carefully. If you're not, let's just say you'll be reminded of your mistake for the rest of the day. Now comes the part about taking care of your teeth. Toothbrush? Toothpaste? Forget it. What you actually have is a coarse piece of cloth that you rub against your teeth, sometimes with salt, if salt happens to be available. When it isn't, the only alternative is to chew bitter herbs that leave your mouth numb, as if you'd had a bad dose of anesthesia. And as for bathing, well, calling it a bath is being generous. If you're lucky, once a week you can rinse yourself with freezing cold water drawn from a well, poured into a wooden basin that everyone else has already used before you. The water is so icy that even a penguin would shiver in protest. Soap, when it's around, is a crude bar made from animal fat and ashes. It dries your skin out so much you'd swear you'd scrubbed yourself with sandpaper. Shampoo? That doesn't even exist yet. Your hair just turns greasy, flaky with dandruff, and inevitably becomes home to a few six-legged residents you'll discover as the day goes on. That refreshing, clean sensation after a shower? Forget it. You finish washing feeling sticky, smelling faintly of rancid fat, and already counting down the 7 long days until you can repeat this so-called cleansing ritual. Now for breakfast, or rather, the lack of it. Coffee? That won't be discovered for centuries. Tea? Rarely, and only when you're very fortunate. You head to the Great Hall, where all meals are served. The floor is covered in old straw, scraps from yesterday's food, and a few things you'd rather not identify. Your morning drink is weak beer. Not because life is one endless party, but because water isn't safe. At least the beer has been boiled during brewing, making it less likely to sicken you. But don't imagine the cold, refreshing kind you might drink today. It's warm, tastes like sour bread, and has a questionable texture. And the food? A chunk of bread, hard as stone, that you have to soak in beer just to chew without breaking a tooth. If you're lucky, there's a piece of cheese with a suspicious green tint. You're not sure if it's seasoning or mold, but you eat it anyway. On rare and special days, you might even get an egg. No one knows how long it's been sitting around. Sometimes it's half developed inside, but it's protein, and you can't afford to be picky. You chew slowly, trying not to think too hard about the taste. The beer burns a little on the way down, but at least it kills whatever bacteria might be festering in your mouth. Around the table, the other squires eat in silence. Everyone knows that complaining about the food guarantees you'll go hungry tomorrow. You quickly learn that forced gratitude can literally be a survival skill. And when you're done, you lick your fingers. Not out of manners, but because every drop of fat, every crumb of bread, could mean the difference between staying on your feet or collapsing before the day even begins. Then comes the task of getting dressed, and that's where the real misery begins. Your undergarment, if it can even be called that, is a linen tunic that hasn't been washed in weeks. What was once white is now a shade somewhere between beige and suspicious brown. The fabric is as rough as old wallpaper and clings to your skin in ways that defy logic. Over that goes your main tunic, heavy, coarse wool that fails to keep you warm in winter and transforms into a suffocating furnace in summer. The sleeves are too long, the collar itches constantly, and the fabric is permanently stained with sweat, food, and unidentifiable blotches that together tell the story of the past 6 months of your life. The trousers, well, calling them trousers might be generous. They're basically 2 tubes of rough fabric tied around your waist. No elastic, no zipper, no buttons. Just a rope you knot and twist, praying it holds through the day. Because if it comes loose in front of your knight, you'll learn the true meaning of medieval humiliation. And the footwear, if you can even call it that, consists of crude scraps of half-cured leather strapped to your feet with thongs. The soles are as thin as cardboard, so every pebble on the ground turns into a painful sensory event. In the winter, your toes go numb from the cold. In the summer, they stew in their own sweat. But the real nightmare isn't the clothes themselves. It's what lives in them. First, the fleas. They've built a luxury resort along the seams of your tunic. You can feel them leaping, biting, throwing private parties right around your waistline. Scratching only makes it worse. Tiny welts become open sores, which in turn get infected. Then come the lice. Not just in your hair, but in your eyebrows, your beard, and even in places you didn't think had hair. They're relentless, cunning, and seemingly immortal. You can pick them out for hours, only to find the next day they've multiplied like a cursed army. And the ticks. Oh yes, the ticks. Little vampires that latch onto your skin and swell up like children's party balloons as they drain your blood. Removing them is a delicate art. Do it wrong and their heads stay buried under your flesh, practically guaranteeing an infection. So, every day you perform inspections on yourself. Like some desperate primate picking parasites, you spend precious minutes scanning your body, plucking off your unwanted companions. It becomes a survival ritual, as natural as breathing. And the best part? There's no bug spray, no flea soap. All you've got are your fingernails and a stubborn will to at least reduce the population of creatures that see you as an all-you-can-eat buffet. By 5:30 in the morning, the sun isn't even fully up. Yet your knight is already waiting in the stables with a to-do list that would give a modern personal trainer nightmares. First task, the armor. You stare at that mountain of metal and wonder, how on earth does this fit on a single human being? Forget those movie montages where a hero is armored up in seconds to epic music. This is a slow, complicated ordeal requiring the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. Every piece has its own name, its exact place, and a strict order in which it must be strapped on. Helmet, coif, aventail, hauberk, vambraces, cuisses, greaves. You either memorize these terms or face a beating for fumbling them. The whole set weighs around 30 kilograms. 30 kilos of iron you have to lug around, sort, lay out in order, and fasten onto your knight without leaving anything too loose or too tight. It's like assembling a three-dimensional puzzle where every wrong piece could mean the difference between survival and, well, not so much survival for your master. And no matter how hard you scrubbed yesterday, the armor is always filthy again. Rust blooms overnight, mud cakes on like cement, and dark stains linger that might be dried blood or something worse. You scour each plate with wet sand and coarse rags until your fingers split and bleed. The helmet, the helmet, is a world of horror on its own. The inside is lined with leather that's never once been properly cleaned. The stench is indescribable. Fermented sweat, greasy hair, stale breath. Putting it on is like sticking your head into a soccer player's shoe rack after 3 matches in the blazing sun. After the armor comes the horse. And don't imagine some elegant Disney creature trotting gracefully across the field. No. This is an 800-kilogram war beast with zero tolerance for beginners. It bites, it kicks, and it has very clear opinions about how it expects to be handled. You'll need to brush its coat, feed it, scrape the mud from its hooves, each one the size of your head and capable of turning your foot into mashed potatoes in a second. Then wrestle a saddle heavier than you onto its back, all while the animal does its best to treat you like a punching bag. And don't be fooled into thinking the medieval saddle is built for comfort. It's neither pleasant for the knight nor merciful to the poor soul lifting it. Crafted from wood wrapped in leather and reinforced with chunks of metal, strapping it onto the horse feels like trying to fit a refrigerator on a hyperactive child. Add the stirrups, reins, blanket, and harness. Every single piece has to be fastened perfectly. If something fails during training, let alone in battle, the blame will land squarely on your shoulders. And the punishment, let's just say, you'll quickly realize that fleas would have been the kinder option. But the hardest part isn't the smell, the weight, or even the risk of being trampled by 800 kilograms of muscle and bad temper. The real torment comes when, after 2 hours of meticulous preparation, Your knight rides off, rolls in the dirt, and returns expecting you to scrub, polish, and reset everything again. And you'll do it. With a smile. Because complaining doesn't exist in your survival vocabulary. 9 o'clock, combat training. And if you naively assume your role is just to watch, you couldn't be more mistaken. First lesson, you are the moving target, literally. Your knight needs practice with the lance, which means you'll be clutching a shield, heavier than a backpack stuffed with textbooks, and sprinting in specific directions while he tries to hit it. Ideally, the point strikes the shield, not your ribs. Reality? Medieval accuracy leaves a lot to be desired. You dart across the training ground in zigzags, sweating under itchy wool clothes, tripping over your own boots as a razor-sharp iron tip whistles past your ear. Every near miss makes you thank heaven. Every direct hit to the shield leaves your arms so numb you can't feel them for minutes. Second lesson, you are the human punching bag for sword drills. No fancy training dummy here. Instead, you're shoved into a borrowed suit of armor. Always the worst one available, dented, incomplete, and reeking of whatever unfortunate soul wore it last, and told to stand still while your knight hammers you with strikes. The oversized plates shift dangerously, leaving gaps at exactly the wrong spots. You feel less like a squire and more like a rusty sardine can being tested against heavy artillery. Third lesson, riding practice. Not your riding practice. His. Yours is running. You jog beside the horse. Remember, the horse hates you. Hauling spare gear, water, and an arsenal of weapons your knight might decide to switch to mid-exercise. And it's not a casual jog. You're pushed for kilometers, over rocks, through mud, across steep slopes, while carrying enough weight to knock out a grown man. Your lungs burn, your legs quiver, and for the first time, you begin to grasp why the life expectancy of a squire was never something worth boasting about. And that's just the beginning. During training, your duties include collecting the weapons he drops. And believe me, he drops plenty. Balancing a 4-meter spear in one hand while holding a shield in the other, all while riding a half-ton animal, isn't exactly child's play. Wiping down the horse's sweat. Yes, horses sweat profusely, and it's filthy. Someone has to scrub it off. Fixing broken gear on the spot. You're basically a walking toolbox, hauling hammers, nails, scraps of leather, thread, and needles, ready to perform emergency repairs while the entire company taps their feet in impatience. Providing food and drink, not only for the knight, but for his mount as well. But the real madness starts when other knights show up to train together. Because now, you're not serving just one adrenaline-drunk rider on an unpredictable beast. You're running after several of them, each determined to push you harder, make you carry heavier loads, and force you to polish more equipment in record time. It turns into a cruel game, where you're both the trophy and the loser at once. They place bets on how long you'll keep sprinting, on how often you'll stumble, and on the exact moment you'll finally collapse from exhaustion. And when training is finally over, after 4 relentless hours under the blazing sun, running, hauling, and even being used as moving target practice, you're greeted by a mountain of filthy, battered equipment that needs scrubbing and repairing. Because your workday doesn't end when training stops. It ends only when every piece is clean, patched up, organized, and prepared for the next day's session. If fortune smiles on you, that might happen before midnight, noon, lunchtime. You're starving, drenched in sweat, and fantasizing about a proper meal. But first, you must navigate the dining hierarchy. Inside the Great Hall, 3 long tables are set. The high table, reserved for the lord of the castle, the most esteemed knights, and any noble guests. The middle table, for lesser knights, skilled craftsmen, and the administrative staff. And the lowest table, for squires, servants, and anyone else society deems expendable. Guess where you sit, but before you even think about sitting, you serve everyone. From the other tables, you lug heavy trays of steaming food from the kitchen across what feels like endless corridors, though in truth, it only feels endless because you've already run half a marathon that morning. Your legs shake, your fingers are numb, but you cannot drop a single dish. Dropping food is a serious offense. It means waste, insult, and a punishment that usually involves scrubbing the entire kitchen floor with a toothbrush. The meals you carry smell divine. Roasted meats, warm loaves of bread, baskets of fruit, cheeses that actually look edible instead of resembling failed experiments. Your stomach growls so loudly the dogs look at you in alarm, but you can't even lick your fingers. That would be theft. Only after serving everyone else do you take your place at your table. And then you discover what's left for you. Leftovers, quite literally. Gnawed bones discarded by the knights. Crusts of bread that hit the floor and were picked up again. Wilted vegetables nobody wanted, and a broth that looks more like muddy water than soup. Still, you eat it, gratefully, because it's all you get, and complaining could mean no food at all tomorrow. Around the table, the other squires eat in silence. Everyone chews slowly, stretching each bite as if trying to make the food last longer. Everyone knows that the next proper meal won't come until supper, if it comes at all. You pick up strange skills here: how to soften boiled leather enough to swallow it, how to scrape away mold and judge which scraps of bread are still safe. These are lessons no modern classroom would ever bother to teach. Yet out here, with hunger gnawing at you and endless work piling up, they mean survival. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun blazes overhead. The wool of your clothes turns into an oven, and you realize the morning was nothing but a warm-up. Now the true work begins. Upkeep. Every suit of armor used in training must be taken apart piece by piece, scrubbed, inspected, repaired, and reassembled. This isn't a chore you finish in minutes. It's a craftsman's duty that consumes hours and demands the precision of a surgeon. Each plate of metal must be scoured with sand until it shines. Every joint has to be greased with animal fat. Cracks must be sealed. Dents smoothed away. You labor inside a workshop that feels more like a furnace. The forge spits out waves of heat that make the air unbearable. Sweat soaks your clothes until they cling to your skin. The stench of burning coal, hot iron, and melting fat builds a haze that would make a person from the future faint. And it isn't just armor. Spears must be straightened, and their shafts checked for hidden splits. Shields need their leather covers replaced, and their straps tightened. Every tool is tied directly to your knight's survival. If something fails in battle, he may not come home alive. And if he doesn't come back, neither do your wages, your shelter, or your meals. So you labor with the kind of care only someone desperate understands. Every rivet, every stitch, every polish is the difference between life and the other thing. Meanwhile, you are expected to learn, because being a squire is not merely serving, it's apprenticing. Supposedly, you are on the path to knighthood yourself, if you survive long enough and prove you deserve it. So between one repair and the next, your knight drills you. He teaches tactics. He explains the strengths and weaknesses of weapons. He shows you how to spot flaws in an opponent's armor. He forces you into a saddle until you can stay mounted when the horse breaks into a gallop. The lessons are brutal. There is no theory without pain. You study swords by gripping one while your master shouts at you where to strike. You study horses by being shoved into the saddle until you ride without tumbling off. You study tactics by being thrown into mock battles where you are student and target all at once. Every mistake earns instant correction through yelling, slaps, or extra punishments. This is not gentle schooling. This is urgency carved into flesh. And slowly, through sweat, pain, and unending exhaustion, you begin to grasp it. You begin to see that you're not only serving a knight, you're absorbing a code of survival. You're sharpening skills most men of your age will never know. You're being molded into part of a warrior class that, despite the daily hardships, holds the kind of power and prestige that peasants in their villages will never touch. But the day is far from over. And before it ends, plenty can still go wrong. 6 o'clock in the evening. The sun begins to sink beyond the horizon, and you suddenly realize that the frightening things you faced in the daylight are nothing compared to the terrors that belong to the medieval night. First lesson: there is no electricity. Once the last glow of the sunset fades, the world collapses into a darkness so heavy that modern people can hardly comprehend it. It is a thick, consuming void where sight becomes useless. Your only weapons against it? Candles, luxuries that melt away too quickly. Torches, smoky, unreliable, and capable of burning everything down. Hearth fires, hungry for wood, which is just as costly as food. So, most of the night is spent in near total darkness. And in that suffocating dark, the medieval imagination awakens. Because in this age, everyone knows the night belongs to beings that should never be spoken of. Wolves that stand on 2 legs, restless corpses that claw their way back from the grave, spirits and demons searching for unguarded souls to corrupt, witches soaring through the air, stealing the milk from cows or the breath from infants. It's easy to laugh in the 21st century, but laughter dies quickly when you are trapped in a freezing stone tower, the wind howling like mournful voices, and strange echoes rattling through the empty corridors. In moments like these, superstition feels very, very real. And not all dangers are imaginary. There are thieves slipping into castles under cover of night, searching for bread or silver. Mercenaries hired to murder knights in their sleep. Enemy soldiers creeping through the shadows. Wild beasts sniffing around the stables in search of warmth and livestock. You lie down, if you can sleep at all, with a dagger beneath your straw pillow. Your ears remain sharp, your nerves wound tight, every thump on the shutter or scurry in the walls setting your heart racing. But the greatest danger isn't outside. It lurks inside your own body. In the medieval night, every symptom could be the beginning of the end. A headache might mean a damaged brain. A cough might be the plague sweeping through nearby villages. A small cut could rot into gangrene. There are no antibiotics, no painkillers, no doctors as you know them, only barbers with blades who bleed you, or wise women stirring herbs with whispered prayers. So you live with a constant whisper of fear. Every cramp could be dysentery, killing you in 3 days. Every blemish might be leprosy, condemning you to exile and shame. And when you finally collapse onto your makeshift bed of straw, sometime near midnight, your eyes adjust to the gloom. You begin to distinguish shapes, shadows, movements. Yet this only makes it worse, because now you see what your mind desperately hoped wasn't there. If sleep ever comes, perhaps around 1 in the morning, you know it won't last. In 3 short hours, you'll wake again to repeat the cycle, if you wake at all. Because in the Middle Ages, going to sleep is an act of faith. Morning arrives, if you are fortunate enough to see it, and now you must face another truth of medieval life that no one warned you about. Religion is compulsory. There is no, "I don't believe," no, "I'm not practicing." Everyone is Catholic, everyone participates, and deviation is heresy. And heresy, well, punishment for that is brutal. So before you even wipe your face with a filthy rag, you kneel beside your bed of straw and pray. 15 minutes at least, in Latin. A language you barely understand, but must pronounce perfectly. Pater noster, qui es in caelis, you murmur as your legs ache against the frozen floor. Every word must be exact, for God is listening, and if he dislikes what he hears, perhaps today will be your last. It isn't just a quick prayer. It's a sacred ritual. You thank God for surviving the night. You confess the countless sins of the previous day. You beg for protection in the hours ahead. And you promise to live as a better Christian, knowing full well you'll break that vow before noon. Then comes the mandatory Mass. Before anyone eats, the entire household gathers in the chapel for a full service. An hour of Latin chants on cold stone floors, stomachs growling loud enough to rouse the dead. The priest, a man who reeks of incense and sour wine, preaches of sins, demons, and damnation, painting vivid pictures of all the ways your soul might be lost forever. The rules he declares are endless, complicated, and often shift depending on his mood. Glance too long at a woman? Sin. Think about food during prayer? Sin. Question even a single word of church teaching? Deadly heresy. Throughout the entire Mass, you must pretend you are completely attentive, as if you understand every word and agree with every statement. In your medieval imagination, hell is not a metaphor. It is a tangible place filled with real demons eager to torment you for eternity if you slip up even once. The saints are not distant figures. They are living intercessors who might plead on your behalf if your prayers are said correctly. Miracles? They are real too, but only if heaven wills it. So this is not simply a ritual you attend out of social duty. It is sheer terror, a desperate attempt to avoid burning forever in eternal flames by doing everything with absolute precision. After the Mass, followed by a breakfast of stale bread, the grueling military drills begin. But this is not just chasing after a horse or balancing a shield. Today is special training, which is code for discovering firsthand why the lifespan of a medieval warrior is so tragically short. First exercise, hand-to-hand combat. You are handed a wooden sword, which stings just as much as iron when it strikes flesh. There is no such thing as taking it easy because it's practice. The rule is simple. Fight as if your life hangs by a thread, or get beaten until you collapse. That wooden blade weighs nearly 3 kilos. After 5 minutes, your arms burn like fire. After 10, lifting it feels impossible. But the drill lasts 2 hours straight. No water breaks, no mercy. You learn to block only after feeling the punishment of failure. Each blow to your ribs steals your breath. Every strike to your arms leaves bruises that will last weeks. And a poorly defended hit to your head makes the world spin for minutes. Second exercise, target practice with the bow. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Aim at a large board and release the arrow. Except, the medieval bow demands strength you didn't even know your body possessed. Drawing it to full tension is like lifting the heaviest weight at the gym. The string carves your fingers raw, your shoulders ignite as if on fire. And after an hour of attempts, you still haven't landed a single arrow on target. They scatter everywhere but where you want. Each missed shot means searching the grass for your arrow, repairing it, and enduring a lecture about wasting resources. Third exercise, everyone's dreaded favorite, endurance training. You are strapped into a full suit of armor, 30 kilos of poorly fitted iron, and forced to run for miles, climbing hills, stumbling through valleys, crossing streams, leaping obstacles. The armor smashes into your body with every stride. The plates pinch your skin. The helmet narrows your sight and strangles your breathing. You sweat so profusely that puddles form inside your boots. But you cannot stop. On a real battlefield, stopping is death. So you keep going, even when your legs tremble violently, even when your vision blurs, even when you are certain you will collapse with the next step. And when at last you finish, drenched in sweat, streaked with blood, and aching in muscles you never knew existed, your knight simply looks at you and says, "Tomorrow we'll repeat everything, twice as fast." Then comes lunch. But don't be deceived into thinking you'll eat in peace. The medieval dining hall is a minefield where a single wrong move can wreck your entire future. The moment you step into the Great Hall, you are forced to calculate survival equations in your head. Where can you sit without insulting someone of rank? Whom can you speak with without sounding like a gossip? How do you eat without looking like a starving beast, when in fact you have been starving for months? The Squire's table is a strange blend of rivalry and brotherhood. Everyone shares the same torment, which breeds solidarity, but at the same time, everyone is fighting for the same scarce chances of advancement. If a position opens under a more prestigious knight, friendships momentarily dissolve into silent hostility. If someone is granted an extra portion of meat, quiet envy brews. And if a comrade is punished harshly, you feign sympathy, while secretly sighing in relief that it wasn't you. And then there are the conversations. No international news, no television, no books, no internet. Just scraps of stories from wandering merchants, questionable rumors, and endless castle gossip. I heard that Sir Robert is arranging a marriage with some count's daughter. They say a trader arrived with spices from the east, but only for the Lord's table. Someone was caught stealing bread from the kitchen and will go 3 days without food. You learn to handle these exchanges like a seasoned envoy. You nod just enough to avoid being labeled unfriendly, but never so much that you're tied to a dangerous stance. You lean into gossip with sincere curiosity, but never so far that you look like a schemer. You share just enough useful insight, while carefully holding back anything that could later be used against you. Because inside a medieval fortress, knowledge is currency, and currency misused quickly becomes a death sentence. Yet the most captivating part isn't what's said at your own bench. It's what happens at the others. At the high table, decorated knights feast on lavish meals, drink refined wine, and debate matters that shape the fate of hundreds of souls. With casual words, they decide who thrives, who starves, who rises, and who is buried. Meanwhile, you sit gnawing on a stripped bone, fully aware that your entire existence depends on the whims of people who don't even know your face. At the middle table, craftsmen and merchants boast of their talents. The blacksmith brags about a flawless blade he hammered. The carpenter paints vivid pictures of the grand table he constructed. Each one amplifies his triumphs, desperate to secure better contracts and recognition. And, at your table, Squires chew silently, all haunted by the same unspoken question. How in the world do I get out of here? When the meal ends, the educational part of your day begins. A brutal crash course in surviving the Middle Ages. Your knight summons you for a private talk. Those words never bring comfort. "Squire," he says in that grave tone that signals you're about to learn a lesson you'd rather not. "It's time you grasp how the world truly works." And so begins a lecture in medieval realpolitik, sharp enough to make Machiavelli scribble notes. First rule: everyone wants you dead. This isn't paranoia, it's arithmetic. You have enemies you've never met. The rival squire who sees you as competition. The cook who thinks you're given too much favor. The lord's daughter who didn't like the way you greeted her yesterday. Trust a few, suspect the rest, and always sleep with a blade. Your knight advises with the ease of someone commenting on the weather. Second rule: alliances are fragile, but self-interest is eternal. The squire you call brother today could betray you tomorrow if the political tides demand it. The knight who treats you kindly may hand you over without hesitation to save himself. Loyalty has value, he warns, but never let it make you a fool. A corpse cannot serve anyone. Cetum, third rule: information outweighs gold. You're trained to observe everything, to listen more than you speak. Who whispers with whom during meals? Which knights avoid one another? What letters enter and leave the castle? Subtle shifts in daily patterns that signal danger approaching. Your ears, he says, are sharper weapons than your sword. Use them more than your tongue. But the lesson that eclipses all others is about violence. Because here, violence isn't a last resort. It's the common tongue. It is how disputes end, how hierarchies stand, how justice is enforced. The charged silence when two knights clash in opinion. The sudden hush that grips the hall after one wrong word. The way eyes drop to the floor when doom is near. When the blade comes out, your knight concludes, and it always does, you face two choices: be on the winning side or be buried. There is no middle path. And then he passes on the most priceless survival skill of all: invisibility. Not literal invisibility. That would be sorcery, and sorcery would see you burned at the stake. But social invisibility. The craft of being present without being noticed. Of serving swiftly without drawing eyes. Of knowing everything while appearing to know nothing. The finest squire, he says, is the one everyone forgets exists, until he is suddenly needed. Eiter? These are lessons no modern classroom offers, but they become the bedrock of survival in a society where one misstep in etiquette can cost you your life. Every now and then, today being one of those dreadful occasions, the castle hosts what they call a celebration. And, in your innocent mind, you might think, finally, a break from the endless grind. Oh, how terribly mistaken you are. Medieval banquets are not joyful escapes. They are brutal marathons of physical and mental endurance, the kind that would send any modern event planner into hysterics. And for you, the lowly squire, these festivities mean far more toil than an ordinary week of servitude. First, the ordeal of preparation. From sunrise to sunset, you are burdened with dragging massive tables, heavy benches, embroidered tapestries, barrels of ale, and mountains of food into the great hall. Nothing is light, nothing is safe, and everything must be flawless. The slightest mistake means extra punishment. Fixing instead of resting. The wooden tables weigh more than a modern piano. The benches are hacked from raw logs that shred your hands with splinters and the tapestries are priceless works of art. Damage one, and the debt would cost you decades of wages. Second, the feast itself. While the nobles revel, you sprint like a madman, serving endless platters of meat, pouring wine into golden goblets, cleaning up mess after mess. And what chaos it is. Drunken knights fling roasted fowl across the hall. Shrieking ladies spill crimson wine over gowns worth a fortune. And mangy dogs sneak entire joints of meat from the tables, leaving trails of bones behind them. You balance trays heavier than an anvil, duck flying cups, scrub up vomit from overindulgent lords, and, above all, force yourself to smile. A sour face at a feast is no small insult, and insults have consequences. Third, the entertainment. The so-called amusements of a medieval gathering would horrify the modern world. Cockfights, where bloodied roosters tear each other apart while nobles gamble fortunes. Drinking contests, where grown men collapse unconscious one by one until only the last staggering fool claims a prize. And cruel games, where servants and squires like yourself become unwilling clowns for the amusement of the powerful. Come here, boy. Let's see if you can balance this jug of wine on your head while dancing. It sounds harmless, until you realize the jug is brimming full. Every drop spilled comes out of your pay, and the dance involves tightroping across a rope while guests hurl scraps at you. Fourth, the music forget amplifiers and acoustics. What you get is a half-drunk minstrel with a warped lute, howling ballads that stretch on without mercy. The tunes are always the same, always long, always loud, and they pierce your ears without pause. Verse after verse, about valiant knights and helpless maidens, repeated endlessly. After 3 hours of The Ballad of the Brave Knight, your sanity begins to slip. It's no wonder many squires develop twitching nerves. Fifth, the aftermath. When the revelers finally stumble out, usually near dawn, your true torment begins. Cleaning. You sweep up crushed bread and greasy bones ground into the dirt floor. You gather shattered goblets and plates, careful not to slice your fingers. You scrub wine stains that have sunk so deep into the wood they will never truly fade. You mop up vomit, urine, and other unmentionable fluids nobles left in corners, as if the world were their chamber pot. You extinguish torches before they burn down the hall. You collect forgotten swords and daggers abandoned by drunken knights. By the time you finish, the first light of dawn breaks. It is 4 in the morning. You collapse onto your straw mattress, knowing you have barely 2 hours of rest before another ordinary day begins. Because tomorrow, no one will remember your exhaustion. No one will thank you. They will expect you cheerful, alert, and ready for flawless service once again. Your medieval way of thinking is conditioned to see the supernatural everywhere, where modern science would give a simple explanation. That creak in the wall? It isn't a mouse. It's the restless soul of someone who met a violent end. That shifting shadow at the window? Not a tree branch swaying in the wind. It's a dark entity searching for a body to inhabit. And you don't just wonder about these things. You believe them with every fiber of your being. In those centuries, everyone has tales to share. A knight swears he once spoke to a man who encountered a werewolf. A cook insists she saw a ghost appear in the cellar. A priest testifies that he's fought off demons trying to invade the minds of the faithful at night. Stories like these spread rapidly, growing with each retelling, picking up new details until everyone knows someone who has faced the unseen world. So when you're lying on your scratchy straw mattress, in total darkness, and you hear slow footsteps in the corridor, your mind doesn't say, "Someone is still awake." It says, "Something has come for me." When the shutter rattles in the wind, you don't think, "That hinge needs fixing." You whisper, "Something is trying to force its way in." When branches scrape the outer wall, you don't hear a storm approaching. You imagine a creature clawing its way inside. Living with fear. The real danger is that these fears can't be brushed aside. In the medieval worldview, dismissing signs of the supernatural is reckless pride. Failing to shield yourself against evil is the same as opening the door to it. So you pray. Desperately. Latin chants thought to carry divine power. Hail Marys, whispered into the dark. Our Fathers repeated over and over until exhaustion drags you into uneasy sleep. And there are other practices, unspoken, but everywhere. Salt scattered along the window ledge to keep out wandering spirits. Crosses woven from sticks, hidden under pillows. Special prayers recited in strict order to form an invisible barrier around your bed. The Church may publicly frown upon such rituals, but quietly tolerates them. Because even priests perform them. When sleep finally takes you, your dreams are haunted by the very images that filled your waking thoughts. Red-eyed beasts chasing you through endless corridors. The dead rising from graves to demand repayment. Demons disguised as friends and neighbors, tricking you into surrendering your soul. Waking from such nightmares, in the pitch-black stillness of a medieval night, leaves you shaken, unsure whether you've truly woken, or whether the horrors have crossed into reality. The crushing loneliness of night. Perhaps the worst part of the medieval night is not the fear, but the silence. No books to read, no lamps to light, no distraction at all. Only you, your thoughts, and the heavy darkness pressing in from every side. It is in that silence that the truth becomes clear. Medieval life isn't defined only by lack of technology or comfort, but by helplessness. You have no control, no certainty of improvement, no real knowledge of how the world works. Each night, you close your eyes knowing you may not wake at all. Disease, accident, or hunger could take you before dawn. Your only weapon is prayer, hoping God chooses to spare you. A day survived midnight arrives. Somehow, you've made it through another day as a squire. In this age, that survival itself is no small achievement. You lie on your straw-filled bedding, scratchy and thin, wrapped in a blanket no warmer than a burlap sack. And like every human who suffers under hardship, your thoughts wander toward the future. That is when medieval reality strikes, like the blow of a warhammer. What future awaits you as a squire? If fortune smiles, if your skill is unmatched, and if heaven itself blesses you, you might, just might, rise to the rank of knight. But such ascension is rarer than winning a modern lottery. Out of 1,000 squires, perhaps 1 or 2 will ever reach that height. The rest remain in service until their bodies fail. First as squires, then as simple laborers. Later, too weak for heavy work, they slip into poverty and beg for scraps. Until, finally, disease, starvation, or accident ends their days. And old age in this world means your 40th year. At 40, you are already called an elder, your body broken by decades of brutal toil, your spine bent, your knees wrecked, your hands stiff with pain that never fades. If you live to 50, you are a marvel. At 60, you are spoken of with reverence, a relic still walking among the living. But let us be generous. Let us dream that you do rise and become a knight. You eventually realize that being a knight isn't about shining armor and glory. It means carrying burdens that almost no one could truly handle. You're expected to oversee lands, command men in battle, make weighty political choices, and sustain a lifestyle far more costly than anything your income could ever support. In many ways, being a knight in the Middle Ages is like being the founder of a modern startup. Crushing responsibility, endless stress, and overwhelming odds of collapsing in spectacular fashion. And there's another twist. Becoming a knight means you'll need a squire. You'll glance at some eager young boy and silently ask yourself, how can I possibly explain to him that the life he's about to enter will feel like an endless nightmare? In his eyes, you'll recognize the same naive optimism you once carried, and through your own experience, you'll know exactly how that fragile hope will be slowly, relentlessly destroyed. But perhaps the deepest reflection comes at night, lying awake in darkness, wondering about the meaning of life in an age when life itself seems to have so little meaning. Your existence is built around serving someone, who in turn serves someone else, who also serves another. It's a never-ending chain of duty, where no one really chose their place. You didn't choose to be a squire. It was the only path to avoid starvation. Your knight didn't choose knighthood. He was born into it. The lord of the castle didn't choose his title. He inherited it. Everyone is locked inside a rigid social system that no one designed, yet everyone accepts because it's the only reality they know. And that acceptance might be the most chilling aspect of medieval life. The misery itself is not the most frightening thing. It's the way people embrace it as natural, inevitable, and ordained by heaven. No one questions why some are born noble and others as serfs. No one imagines society could be built any other way. No one dreams of technological or social advancement. You go to sleep each night knowing tomorrow will mirror today, and the day after will be no different, until death comes. Ideas like self-improvement or personal growth don't exist. All that exists is survival, and surrendering to the fate believed to be handed down by God. And yet, deep in some hidden corner of your medieval mind, there flickers a spark of something else. Perhaps you find yourself imagining what it would be like to wake in a soft bed, bathe in warm water, eat until satisfied. What it would mean to choose your own trade, to travel freely, to learn simply out of curiosity. Dreams impossible in your time, but they keep you sane in the harshest moments. And maybe it's that flicker, that fragile capacity to dream of something beyond survival, that would one day carry humanity out of the Middle Ages into the world you, a person of the 21st century, now know. Maybe every small, impossible dream of an ordinary person was a brick in building a future where squires no longer exist, because no one needs to live that way anymore. 1 in the morning, the great lesson. It's 1 in the morning. You're exhausted, sore, and mentally drained. Yet in that moment of absolute stillness, something profound happens. You begin to grasp truths about the human condition that modern people rarely experience. First truth, you discover the essence of gratitude. Not the shallow, thanks for the nice meal kind of gratitude, but the raw, existential kind. The thankfulness for simply being alive one more day. To drink water without fearing dysentery, that's a miracle. To lie down on a surface not crawling with parasites, that's real luxury. To eat without checking for worms, that's a divine blessing. Modern people complain when the Wi-Fi is slow. You thank God when you can urinate without pain, because in medieval times, a urinary infection means weeks of agony without cure. Second truth, you recognize the real value of time. In the 21st century, people kill time on their phones, waste time in traffic, or claim they don't have time for what matters. But as a medieval squire, every single minute of life is a literal triumph. Waking up without fever is victory. Surviving a night without robbers breaking in is a gift. Passing a week without war erupting is a season of unimaginable peace. Third truth, you learn the meaning of true simplicity. Your possessions fit in a small bundle, an extra shirt, a small knife, a wooden crucifix, maybe a copper coin for emergencies. And strangely, you don't long for anything else. Because when survival is your only concern, you're not thinking about owning the latest cart model or the most fashionable armor. Your night of wandering thoughts and quiet reflections is suddenly broken by noises that freeze your veins. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy footsteps echo down the corridor. Too heavy for a servant. Too steady for someone lost. Too purposeful to be random. You stop breathing, straining your ears. In the suffocating blackness of the medieval night, without lamps, without screens, without a single glimmer of artificial light, your other senses awaken with unnerving sharpness. The air shifts. There's a faint metallic tang mixed with something unfamiliar, almost animal, that you cannot name. Your muscles tense by instinct, preparing for something. You don't even know what. Creak. The door of the adjoining room groans softly. Someone entered, or someone left. You count silently in your head. That chamber belongs to Thomas, the young squire who arrived only a month ago. Barely 15, still wiping tears at night when no one sees, still whispering for his mother. The footsteps halt directly in front of your door. Your heartbeat drums so loudly, you are certain the intruder can hear it through the wood. You clamp your eyes shut, as though blindness could make you invisible, and mutter under your breath a prayer in Latin, words you memorized for mortal peril. Pater Noster, quies in caelis. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. Then the steps move again, fading down the corridor, swallowed by silence. You release a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. By morning, the truth arrives like ice water. 3 squires vanished during the night. Not slain, vanished. As if erased. Their beds empty, their belongings gone, their names already dissolving into unspoken silence. Because in the Middle Ages, some questions were too dangerous to ask. 2:30. The cosmic loneliness. When the adrenaline ebbs, you are left face to face with something modern people almost never encounter. Absolute solitude. There is no telephone to call for company. No internet to reach the wider world. No book within arm's length. Reading is a luxury you barely know. And a single manuscript costs more than a house. There is only you, your restless mind, and the vast hollow of the medieval night. And in that silence, revelations emerge that the age of constant distraction has stolen. You learn that when the mind is starved of outside diversions, it begins to create worlds of its own. You cultivate an imagination so vivid that hours slip by as you weave intricate inner sagas. You compose conversations with people you've met. You replay moments of the past, reshaping their endings. You invent futures where you stand tall as a knight, landowner, and husband to a gracious lady. They are fantasies you would never confess aloud. Yet in the stillness of night, they become more tangible than the cold walls surrounding you. Because when reality is too unforgiving, imagination becomes the only refuge left. 3 o'clock. the arithmetic of survival. Medieval insomnia bears no resemblance to the tossing and scrolling of the modern world. You are not counting deadlines or reading glowing screens. You are measuring survival itself. Your mental sums are stark and merciless. If war breaks out tomorrow, how many weeks of grain remain in storage? If my knight falls in battle, what are my odds of finding another lord before I beg for scraps? If sickness strikes, who will tend me? And what happens if I cannot work for more than 3 days? No scholar teaches this arithmetic, yet it determines life or the unthinkable alternative. Sometimes, though, the numbers tilt toward hope. If I save 1 copper coin each month for 10 years, perhaps I can buy a worn-out horse. If I perform impressively in the next tournament, maybe my knight will recommend me to a wealthier lord. If I reach the age of 30 without crippling misfortune, I might marry a servant girl with a modest dowry. To a modern ear, such ambitions sound unbearably small. For you, they are sparks of meaning, enough to pull you from bed each dawn. 3:30. The philosophy of darkness. In the complete obscurity of the medieval night, when no candle burns, no lantern glows, and mystery itself presses in, your mind drifts into a meditative current that modern people spend fortunes seeking in spiritual retreats. Profound truths whisper themselves only in such isolation. You realize that happiness is not about possessing what you desire. It is desiring what you already possess. And since you own so little, every scrap becomes monumental. An extra slice of bread at supper radiates joy for hours. A casual word of praise from your knight fuels your pride for weeks. A day of dry weather feels like a national celebration held just for you. You discover that contentment is possible even under crushing hardship. Not because your world improves, but because your expectations adjust to it. Most of all, you understand that strength is not the absence of failure, but the insistence on rising again. You stumble daily, in body and in spirit, but you wake every single morning and keep going. 4 in the morning, the inner dawn. 2 hours remain before the day officially begins, yet in those hushed hours of unplanned wakefulness, something within you quietly shifts. You discover that you've cultivated abilities you never thought possible. You can distinguish people by the rhythm of their footsteps, half a field away. You sense the weather changing long before clouds gather, simply by the fragrance in the air. You read your knight's mood by the way he closes a door. These are not fantasies, but survival-born skills. Primitive, medieval superpowers forged by necessity. Even more remarkable, you've developed an emotional resilience so strong that modern therapists would take notes. Discomfort no longer terrifies you. Pain is no longer a crisis. It is simply a signal from your body. Hunger isn't panic. It's merely a reminder that food must be found soon. Patience grows inside you until it borders on meditation. Because in the Middle Ages, nothing moves fast. Decisions take weeks. Journeys consume months. Shifts in society take generations. You learn to exist in the present, not as a trendy philosophy, but as the only practical option. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is too unstable to plan for. All you truly possess is today, this hour, this breath. 5 in the morning. The final watch. With only 1 hour left before the camp stirs, you make peace with a truth most modern people spend a lifetime running from. You control almost nothing. You don't control the moment of your death. You don't control whether illness strikes. You don't control the outbreak of war. You don't control whether your lord treats you with kindness or cruelty. And strangely enough, accepting this absence of control is freeing. Because once you stop wrestling with the impossible, you can finally focus on the very little that is yours to shape. Your effort, your posture, your small daily decisions. You can decide to work diligently, even if the pay is unfair. You can decide to show kindness, even when others don't deserve it. You can decide to hold on to hope when reason whispers despair. Tiny decisions, yet they define you far more than your circumstances do. If you are listening to this in the early hours of a modern night, pause. Look around. You have electric light. Clean water flows from a tap. Food waits inside a refrigerator. Medicine stands ready if you fall ill. You've already won the cosmic lottery simply by being born in this era. 6. In the morning, the awakening morning breaks. Another day awaits. But you are no longer the same person who closed your eyes last night. Through the long night, you've crossed a quiet transformation. A shift that only occurs when you face the raw truths of being human. You've realized that real wealth is not luxury items, it's basic safety. Real success is not impressing strangers, it's enduring with dignity. Real joy is not endless pleasure, it's the absence of needless suffering. As you rise from your straw bedding, stretching stiff muscles and preparing for the routines you now know by heart, a revelation lands. You have endured. Not merely endured, you have adapted, learned, and grown. You've become someone strong enough to survive trials that your modern self would abandon in minutes. Take a deep breath. If you've followed this far, you've already proven your mind is tougher than you once believed. Tell me, what time is it where you are now? And do you think you could truly withstand a day as a medieval squire? Returning to reality. And then, as if waking from a spell, you open your eyes to your actual life. Your mattress has never felt so heavenly. Your hot shower has never seemed so miraculous. Your breakfast has never appeared so abundant. You glance around and marvel at wonders your medieval self could never imagine. Light summoned by a switch. Information appearing on a screen. Instant conversations across the world. Perhaps, just perhaps, you carry back a trace of that medieval wisdom into your present-day life. A little more gratitude for simple blessings. A little more patience with minor frustrations. A little more perspective about what truly matters. Because after spending even an imagined day as a squire, you grasp a profound truth. No matter how difficult your modern struggles feel, you live like royalty compared with nearly everyone who has ever walked this earth. So now, if you're hearing this at night, let those thoughts ease you as you drift into sleep in your warm, safe, comfortable bed. Let this strange tale remind you of how extraordinary your ordinary life truly is. Good night. Rest well. And when you wake tomorrow, remember, you don't have to be a medieval squire. What a relief, isn't it? If this unusual, calming journey spoke to you, subscribe for more. Only if you genuinely enjoy this odd style of storytelling. And if you'd like more historical, non-survival adventures to fall asleep to, leave a comment. What era should we explore next? Until the next sleepless night in history.